There we go. Stay down. Stay down. Decent fish here, guys. Good fish. Good fish. Let's see if I can get my net out here. Get him in the boat. There we go. Come on here. Yeah, there we go. On the drop shot. Decent. Ooh, really good fish. Really good fish. Come here. There we go. Got him in the boat. Man, really good fish. I'm gonna guess about 6. About 6. Ooh, oh, come here. Come here. Come here. I'm gonna guess about 6 pounds on this beauty. Maybe 5.5. Good thing I got the scale here to wear. Five, 6, guys. Let me back up here. 5, 6. Not a bad fish at all for the first fish of the day here. Not very long fishing out here at Jordan Lake. There she is again. Not bad. Not bad at all. All right, let's get her back in the water. What's up, folks? Welcome back to the channel. Welcome back to One Cast Fishing. You guys just saw me catch that, 5-pounder, almost 5.5 pounder out here in Jordan Lake. You've been watching my content recently, then you know I've been catching a lot of fish offshore this summer, especially here at Jordan Lake, but also at Harris Lake. I went out there. It got a lot of numbers, no giants. Actually went a couple days later, caught a couple fish, but the storms rolled in and just didn't get enough footage, I think, to make a decent video. But definitely it's been an offshore summer, been finding the fish offshore, and I've gotten the question, how do I find fish offshore? What is my method? And that's what today's video is gonna focus about. I haven't done a little educational video in a while, but this is what we're doing today. We're talking about how I find fish offshore. I'm gonna bring up images from Navionics, my Lake Master chip, on the types of structure I'm looking for. I've recorded some sonar to throw those images up as well to show you guys what I am looking for when I'm trying to find fish in the summertime. So with that, make sure you like and subscribe. Comment down below anything you want to share with the One Cast community regarding summer fishing. Let me know if this is helpful too, or if you guys want to see anything different. So with that, let's stay tuned. Let's get into step number 1. All right, so step number 1, my first step of finding fish offshore in the summertime begins before I even get out in the water. No matter what lake I go to, I do some research to find out about that lake and about that lake during the season that I'm fishing, and for instance now summer. Even a lake that I've got a lot of history on. I've been fishing Jordan, Harris, and these lakes around the Piedmont for several years now. I didn't fish it last summer because I was deployed. So once again, as we transition from spring to summer, I did some research to get me in tune of where I need to be looking to find fish in the summertime. And it's pretty simple. I'll go to Google. I type in Jordan Lake bass fishing, Jordan Lake summer fishing, Sharon Harris summer fishing. I'm doing it right now for Baden Lake because that's where my tournament is in August. Baden Lake summer bass fishing, Baden Lake fishing in August. And I am looking for a few things when I Google that. A lot of your larger lakes around the country, your local state or your state wildlife magazines. So in North Carolina, it's like Carolina Sportsman or Outdoorsman, I don't remember. We'll have articles from, maybe they're real recent, but they may be several years old. And they'll talk about the general patterns of that lake and how you can catch fish in that lake for that season. Sometimes lakes will drastically change, like Harris Lake. When I first moved here 6-7 years ago, there was hydrilla and primrose all over the place. Power plant says they didn't spray, but it's all gone now. Carr Lake up on the Virginia border. Years ago when Iaconelli won, like early 2000s, there was hydrilla, I guess, all over that lake. Well, it's pretty much impossible to find hydrilla there now. So lakes can drastically change, but for the most part, you can kind of get a general idea of how that lake fishes in the summertime. And I'm looking for things like average depth level. So Jordan Lake, they say 10 to 14 feet, a little shallower, maybe 12, 10 feet as we get into August and that thermocline sets up. Harris might be 15 to 20 feet. Baden Lake, I'm kind of seeing maybe max is about 19 feet now. So I'll look for that average depth level of where you can locate fish. And then I'll obviously look at the types of colors and baits people are using, the types of cover on the structure the bass will get up on. And so I'm generally looking for those average general conditions how fish set up in the summertime. Obviously things will change. Weather conditions will change it. If your lake has a lot of current draw, that will change it. If your lake fluctuates in water level a lot, if the water is real high, it's going to change it. If it's real low, it's going to change how you fish. But for the most part, you can get a lot of information on the general conditions of your lake by researching for some articles from previous years. Other good sources are going to be bass fishing forums. Maybe go on bassresource.com and just Google whatever your lake you're fishing and see what comes up. YouTube is another example. Hopefully you find a YouTuber, and it's what I try to do is give you information of where I'm fishing, how deep I'm fishing, to kind of set those conditions for you. If you're really, really lucky, you'll be fishing a lake that one of the pro tournaments have been on during that season. You can see what worked for them. So multiple avenues out there, but you definitely have to do your research before you even get out on the water to kind of get an understanding of where you need to be fishing that time of year. Step number 2 also takes place before I even get out on the water. And in the military and the Army, we call this a map reconnaissance. I'm going to look at the map of my lake and the contour lines to help identify the ideal spots where bass are going to be staging up in the summertime. Now, I think those of you watching this channel, we know that they stage on main lake points, those long tapery points, ledges, humps, the channel bank swing where that channel comes up and get across the bank. And that channel could be a creek channel, an old river channel, and swings away, a little gentler slope where that channel bank swings away, and the bass will like to stage up on those features. Now, what I like to do is I like to get my information I research, that magic depth level, right, the ideal depth level, and I'll shade that depth level on my map. You can use Navionics, so Navionics, you can get it on your phone. It's also free on the web. I use Lake Master Chip because I have Humminbird, but CMAP, you can do the same thing. You can shade that depth level. So in Navionics, out on Jordan Lake, right now I've got it shaded up to 14 feet. On my Lake Master Chip, on my graph, I have it shaded between 10 and 14 feet. It shows up a different color. And what that does, it helps you identify that magic depth level on those pieces of structure. So that way you can go out and graph that depth level on a hump, on a point, on a ledge. It just helps you see that information or see those contour lines a little bit better, so you don't have to go out there and graph a hump in 25 feet of water if there's a thermocline and 15 feet and the bass aren't going to be that deep, right? Another trick I like to do is after I shade, I will zoom out on the map. And what that will do, you get a bigger, wider picture of the map. But because of that contrast there and that different color and that depth level you shaded, you'll pick up those. So you'll see those points that stick out further in the main lake. You'll see those humps that come up to that depth level. And it's very beneficial to help identify the high percentage areas the bass may be sitting on. I will say, mapping can be temperamental. It depends on your lake. So Jordan Lake, Harris Lake, Lake Master is really good. When I go to Baden Lake in August, there's no Lake Master map for, so I got to use Navionics. And Navionics can be real good, but there can be a difference in it. And I'll show you that here. Here is a underwater point on an island on Jordan Lake. This is close to Pose Ridge. And on the Navionics, you can kind of see it. You can kind of see this come out, but it looks like that point where it sticks out further in the lake is a little bit deeper than that magic depth level. But when I pull up the image here on my Lake Master chip, you can really see that the magic depth level actually protrudes out. It's a little bit more accurate mapping. So I've actually caught quite a few fish on that spot as they get up there chasing shad and white perch, and very, very good spot to fish at this time of year. And so again, your mapping and shading your mapping can really help you eliminate a lot of water a whole lot faster. One other thing with mapping, what I like to look for too, underwater points. In fact, that example I just showed you is one of them. But I like looking on my maps at long straight banks where it looks like there's nothing there. But on some of those banks, there'll be an underwater point that comes out. A little further in, maybe just a little bit further in the lake or a long ways into the lake. Guys who don't have who aren't looking at their maps, don't have maps, a lot of times they'll just blow right over those spots. And so you may find a little less pressured fish in those areas, I mean, the guys who have really good mapping who do this, yeah, they're going to fish it. But there's been several times on Jordan Lake recently, I have fished these subtle underwater points. Guys have just blown right over them, and I pulled up there and caught fish. So it pays to make sure you look at your mapping, look at those main spots I talk about, the humps, the points, you know, the things I mentioned in the beginning here, but also look at those little subtler underwater points that maybe don't jut out as far, and you can find some good schools of bass on those as well. All right, so we talked about, let me get my camera adjusted. There we go. So we talked about the first two things I do to get ready to fish offshore structure. But now it's time to get on the water and talk about what I do in the water to find fish. So when I launch my boat, the first thing I'll do, I'll get out, I'll get in the river channel in deeper water, I'll turn my sensitivity all the way up on the thermocline, on my graph, and see if there's a thermocline. Basically, the thermocline is going to be a hazy area, a straight line across on your graph. That indicates a change in water density. It's not a video on thermocline, but suffice to say there's no oxygen or little oxygen down there. The fish are going to be at that level or above it. I'll also be out looking for balls of bait fish, and the general depth level of those balls of bait fish are, you know, pretty consistent at. If there's a thermocline, it may be right around the thermocline, but if there's no thermocline, a lot of times you can see that consistent level. So you may see a lot of bait fish in like 25 feet. Well, that should tell you they're relating to that depth level, and you should be looking at your fish or looking at the structure at that depth level. So by doing that first thing, it can help, you know, I confirm or deny some of the assumptions that you made when you did your pre-fishing planning and map reconnaissance and research. You can make your adjustments on your depth shading based upon the thermocline or where you see the bait fish at, so you can actually fish that structure you identified a little shallower, a little deeper if you have to make those adjustments. So after I've done that, I'll make a run to the first spot I picked out and I want to graph. Now when I graph over it multiple times. If it's a long point, I'll graph across it 3 or 4 times. I may go up shallow and then back down the deep end and vice versa. If I'm graphing a ledge, I may graph the deep side of the ledge, then come back up on the shallow side. I may then crisscross it back and forth. A hump, I'll go back and forth. I'll go around it. But I'm going to graph a piece of structure multiple times because you don't know where that cover is going to be and where the fish are going to be on that particular piece of structure. And those are really the two things I'm looking for, cover and fish. When I'm looking for cover, I'm looking for 2 things ideally in the summertime. I'm looking for rock or brush piles. Rock just seems to hold fish. It's a hard area. The bass can corral the bait fish and ambush them and eat them. There may be crawfish living down there they can eat. They can hide up in that. Same with brush piles. They can hide in the brush piles. There's a lot of bait around. Those are 2 ideal pieces of cover you can be looking for on your structure. You know, other things are road beds because they've obviously have broken up rock there. I've seen stacked tires out there, artificial fish attractors. So there's a lot of things that could be cover, but a lot of times what I'm looking for is rock and brush piles. And I'm looking for that cover up on those pieces of structure at that right depth level that we talked about. Then I'm looking for fish. You know, if I graph over a point, let's just say it's a point, and I see no cover and I see no fish, I'm going to keep moving on. Now maybe the next spot I pull up and I graph over, I identify rock or brush pile, and I see several balls of bait fish and some larger fish down below, either the dots on the down imaging or side imaging or the fish arches on traditional sonar. That's a good spot I'm going to fish. And if you see that ideal setup, you're probably going to get bit within the first few minutes of casting there. But a lot of times you don't get that ideal setup, so you still have to graph around. A lot of times you'll graph these pieces of structure and the fish won't be right up on it. Even if there's cover there, they may be off the drop. So say you're fishing a ledge and you're going down that ledge and you see all the fish, you know, in that deep water suspended. You know, say the ledge comes out to 15 feet, it drops to 30 feet. All those fish are suspended like in 15 feet over 30 feet of water. Well, that's good because that is telling you the fish are relating to that depth, relating to that piece of structure. They're just not active right now. You know, offshore fishing is a lot about timing. These fish at certain points in the day will corral the bait fish up and feed on these pieces of structure, but they may not be there all day, and it's all about timing. So I would still mark that area, mark that piece of structure, and come back and check it out an hour or 2 later. Those fish now may be up active where you can cast in there and get bit pretty fast. I'm telling you, it's extremely hard to get those suspended fish to bite. They're inactive, they're neutral, and it can be really tough to do that. So I would rather graph around and find some places where the fish are a little more active to have a better chance of catching a fish. Another scenario you may run across is you graph your piece of structure, you see several balls of bait fish, but you don't see any larger dots or any larger fish archers down below it. I'd still mark that. Because you don't see the fish there doesn't mean they're not there. They could be really tucked down in those rocks, tucked in the brush pile. They may not be up actively feeding, but they may be there. And you could cast around if you want. You're probably not going to be bit with as much frequency as that ideal setup I talked about in the beginning, but I would still mark it. And then the last real scenario I want to talk about, and it's what I don't fish a whole lot, and I've seen this a lot, especially on days where the wind has blown for a day or two in a specific direction. You know, those wind-blown points, wind-blown ledges, sometimes you'll pull up on them and they'll just be chocked full of bait fish, shad, white perch, whatever it is. They just maybe, you be scanning down and your whole screen is filled up with that stuff. The problem with fishing that is there's so much bait there, for one. Are the bass gonna bite your lure? Maybe, but there's so much bait there, like there's really no competition. If there's a school there, they don't really gotta get fired up because they can just basically turn their heads and eat whatever they want. Number two is, it's hard to identify unless you see like a big boulder or a big major piece of cover there, right? If it's just like rolling rocks and things, it's hard to know exactly what area to fish when there's so much bait around. So a lot of times I'll avoid those spots just because there's so much there for the bass to eat. It's a little bit tougher sometimes to get them to bite. But those are kind of some scenarios, some things I look for when I go out on the water offshore fishing. Hopefully you guys enjoyed that. It helped you guys out a little bit. Obviously you saw some sonar footage I put up there, so hopefully that helps you identify some of the things I am looking for in the summertime. Again, I am looking for that magic depth level where the fish are going to be at. I'm looking for the structure there, and I'm looking for the cover with those rock piles and those bright areas. A brush pile out with my side imaging or down imaging if I happen to go right over it. And those are the things I am looking for. And usually if you find that and you find the good spots, you can pull up and start casting and get bit within a few minutes. And if you don't get bit, move on and find another spot. So in tournament day, what I like to have is like 15 to 20 spots I can rotate, 2 to 3 times a day. Because ideally through my first rotation, I'll catch a couple fish, my next rotation, catch a couple of fish, and so on. It's all about that timing. So hopefully you guys enjoyed this video. I think now I got a little bit of time. I might go out and do a little bit more fishing. And again, thanks for watching. Go out there, graph around, have some fun. And remember, a lunker is one cast away.